You're listening to a Life in Quebec podcast. For more, visit lifeinquebec.com.
I'm Andrew Greenfield and I'm from Life in Quebec and I'm here with Jason Enlow. Now, Jason, you live in Quebec, as do I.
Yeah.
You have written for Life in Quebec magazine and lifeinquebec.com for quite a while now, and everything that you have written so far has got either an awful lot of traffic on our website or indeed has got us further afield. For example, a previous article that you wrote got us on the radio out west in Calgary.
That's right.
As a tongue-in-cheek thing that you wrote, and we'll put a link to that on our on this post when we put it on lifeinquebec.com. Now, you recently wrote an article titled "What Does an Anglo Have to Do to Get a Good Job in Quebec?" Now, for those people watching this around the world, an Anglo, without wanting to teach you to suck eggs, is somebody whose first language is English. I'd never heard of that word until I moved to Quebec, to be brutally honest with you, as probably a hell of a lot of other people didn't either. However, Jason wrote, "What does an Anglo have to do to get a good job in Quebec?" Now, before I read some parts of this, and many of you out there on the internet have read this already, it's had a mountain of traffic in the last week or so that it's been online. But Jason, just tell me a little bit more about you. Why are you in Quebec? How long you've been here? Tell us a bit about your family situation and your work situation.
Well, like most people, many Anglophones in Quebec, well, they've come for love. So I met I met somebody, and we decided to move here because she's from here. That was 18 years ago. Since then, we've had kids, and they go to school, and well, that's basically it. She has a good job. And I've always worked here, but it hasn't been easy.
No, okay, and that's part of the reason that what we're having a bit of a chat about. Now, it isn't that easy to move to Quebec if your first language is not French, and be successful, basically. So, I'm just going to read a couple of bits from this article. So, what does an Anglo have to do to get a good job around here anyway? You've moved to Quebec City. It's beautiful and you love it. That's great. But now the honeymoon is over, you'd like to find some meaningful work and keep the love fest going. Well, not so fast. You'd better be well hung, says Jason. The more degrees you have hanging up on the walls, the better, and your 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon don't count. Companies are looking for specialists to assume their token Anglo position, so you'd better be well qualified if you want to make the grade. Now, the token Anglo thing, is that not a little bit derogatory? Is this tongue-in-cheek? What are you trying to say?
It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, many companies with a vision towards the world do have at least one Anglophone, and maybe more than one, but usually at least one to handle the English side of things. Because if you're going after different markets, you need to have someone who knows the basics at least of English, because you're dealing with other English speakers from all over the place.
But even though Quebec province is officially a French-speaking province and is recognised as the only one in Canada that has its unilingual francophone, there are many people here who do speak English. There's an awful lot of people that do, and actually there's many first-language French speakers who speak English well and who work in companies here. So is the token Anglo thing a myth or not?
Well, I don't have any research to back it up, but just from my experience bumping into Anglos in Quebec City, often you'll say, "Oh, that's strange, you're here. What are you here for?" "Oh, I work for this company." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, there's another one. There's another one here." Which brings me to sort of when I first moved here, I was shy to speak English, so I'd sort of speak English quietly, and that's my problem, not somebody else's. But at the store, I'd noticed that when I spoke English, heads would whip, and I'm like, "Oh boy, what am I doing?" And I think it's because when I hear someone else speak English, my head whips because I'm like, "Oh, that's strange. They're speaking English."
Yeah.
So, but these people that are surprised to hear an English speaker, they're the ones embedded in the companies. So many French speakers, many people who speak French also speak English, as you said. They watch TV, they watch movies. They're very good, and often they will be the ones that handle the English side of things. But for certain companies, they have attached themselves to this I'd say Anglophone, the token Anglophone.
Okay, so moving down the article a little bit, it's not who you know. Oh wait, yes it is. There's always a chance that someone you know can help you with your job search. Like maybe your best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid who's going with the girl, who heard about a job where they're looking for someone just like you. Well, you never know. It could happen. Keep the faith. You know you're going to live through the rain or the snow and the cold in this case. Now, is it who you know? Can you not say it's not what you know, it's who you know anywhere in the world?
Yes, you can. I'd say that a large number of jobs that I've had are through word of mouth because it's easier. People know you, they can vouch for you, and it cuts through all the problems of finding someone who you can trust. But I'd say here in Quebec, it's even easier. It really helps. Someone I know emailed me saying their friend's coming to Quebec and they're hoping to find a job. Well, because of the network we have, I can see on certain Anglo Facebook pages, or I said, well, and even you're looking for people for certain translating work. So I said, I shot them your name. So they know me, now this person knows you, and that's how it works. It really helps. It's a network. So I think in a sense the English community can stick together and shoot each other jobs. Other than that, it's often my neighbors told me about things. He said, we need some translation work here. Sometimes these jobs are hidden, or if they're on the net, it's complicated to find your way through all the places that might be looking for an Anglophone.
I think, and this is another discussion for another day, but you mentioned the English community. Now, for me, there's two hugely different things. There's the Anglophone community, which is tiny, it's vibrant, there aren't many of us, but it's tiny, and there are some great people in it. But then there's an English community, and for me, an English community is actually anybody capable of communicating in English. My wife, whose first language is not English. Your wife, whose first language is not English. Now I know that your wife, and you and I know your wife's English is excellent. You and I know that my wife's English is excellent. For me, they're part of the English community here in the city because they can communicate in English. But they're not Anglos, so they're not part of the Anglophone community. And I think a lot of people say English community when they mean Anglo community.
I see what you're saying. It's one way to look at it. I don't disagree with you. I think that a lot of French speakers take great pride in going to see a movie and saying, I watched that movie in English because it's an English movie. I want to hear the English voices. Yeah. And it's the same with TV. Whether or not they're part of the English community, well, they're part of the tapestry that make up the city, like the other cultures as well. So,
okay, so let's just again moving further down the article a little bit. Parlez-vous français? Do you speak, read, write, and dream in French? It would be dandy if you did. You do. That's awesome. I'm not talking about Parisian or Ontario French that you learnt at school. I'm talking about French from here. Quebec businesses are looking for francophones who also know their way around English. They're a rare breed akin to the marmalade-eating bears from deepest, darkest Peru. So what are you trying to say here? That companies here are looking for francophones who speak English, or are they looking for anglophones who speak French when they need to cover the English-speaking side of elements of their job?
Well, here in Quebec City, which is 2.5 hours from Montreal, where there are a lot more Anglophones, but here in Quebec City, where if you'd like to find an Anglophone who speaks great French, that would be, that's a great wish to have, and some of them exist. But for the most part, I think in Quebec, where the office work is all done in French, where your day-to-day living is in French, you really need someone whose French is almost perfect, and if they can speak English and read and write and know their grammar, then that's the best. So I think that most Quebec companies here in Quebec City want a francophone who's very good in English.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm sure, listening to even myself, my French isn't bad. It's Ontario French. I did my best with learning, but still, I know people at work. I can see it's sometimes difficult for them to have to listen to me speak, and just for the understanding, it is a waste of time sometimes. And
but you've been here nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
You've seen your kids. You've got 3 teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
They're all in French school. So your kids are clearly bilingual.
Oh yeah.
Now, but you've been here nearly 20 years. Your French must be an awful lot better than when you first arrived because of where you live. It must be.
It must be. Well, I started off with a course at the University Laval,
Yeah.
which sort of brought all the grammatical elements together into sentences. So instead of going to the store and not being able to ask how to buy a stamp, I can do that now. Whether or not my verb tense is correct, I'm at the point where it's, okay, well, I'm just going to shoot it out there and hope for the best. There's certainly more work I could have done over the years. I could have taken courses. I could have tried harder to learn the language better. At the same time, at home, I've been responsible for teaching my kids English in terms of daily talking and reading and all that sort of activity. So there's a laziness too. You're used to speaking English, and I think as you get older, even maybe for some people, you become even more lazy.
Okay. So you've mentioned here, again, a little bit further on here, go teach English. Although some people consider English to be a royal pain in the Assemblée Nationale, the need to speak, don't say it, the language of Shakespeare. I said it, now I feel cheap and dirty. It's never been stronger. I've no evidence to back up this claim that I see many ads for language schools. But employers and employees with an eye on the global market understand that speaking more than one language has its advantages. Well, clearly it does. Such as making money. So get out there and teach. There's a lot of people here that teach English. Do you think they do that as a stopgap to while they're looking for what they really want to do, or do they make a career of it? Or
Well, since there are some people move here because they want to learn French, so I think they come and they may go, and at that point they need some work on the side. Teaching English can be good. It's an hour here, half a day there. There's others who come with a spouse. In that case, they may be looking for work in their field. They may teach as a filler for a while, or they may really enjoy it. Teaching, well, unless you're teaching at a CEGEP or a high school, though, if you're teaching at a language school, those are evenings and weekends, which can be great, but as a career, it's more difficult. But when you look at the job banks, if you type in English, jobs, Quebec, especially Quebec City, what pops up is teach at this school, teach at that school, teach. So obviously they need people.
Yeah.
And companies want people to be able to speak English. So.
Okay, so for people whose first language is not French, who move here, how hard is it to be successful?
Well, I guess it depends on who you are, but you have to be a real go-getter. If you don't plan on learning French, it might be impossible.
Okay.
If you want to learn French and go from there, well, yourself as an example, you've made your mark here in Quebec City with your language school and your magazine and your website and the bookstore. But for someone like me, I often walk around and I see people doing work, and I'm like, I could do that. I could do that too.
Yeah.
But I never will be able to, because they wouldn't want to hire someone like me. It would be too confusing for their customers.
Is that because it's not necessarily that you couldn't do the job, but when it comes to conversing with your colleagues, the language in the office is French, and
well, not even that, yeah. Or at a store, if someone walks into a store and they want help, and we're having trouble, well, it's not their fault. It's my fault. But I mean, I understand the problem. I'm not saying that this is someone owes me a job. Someone owes me. I'm here and I'm English now.
Yeah.
Let's get it on. No, it's the way it is. It's just that you have to take the steps necessary.
Yeah.
To fit in, especially like I said, in Quebec City. Montreal might be different. I don't know. It's much more English there. But when you get away from the Montreal and you get away from the tourist sections in Quebec City, then the small towns. I don't think I would ever move to a smaller town. Then.
Now you mentioned before that the reason you moved here was for love. You met somebody and you decided that this is where you were going to set up home. Now people move to Quebec City for love, for a job, to learn French or to study. It's usually one of those reasons. This region has got so much going for it. There's things that happen. There's so much history here. It's a beautiful city. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Old Quebec. It's absolutely stunning here. It has got so much going for it. There's things that are happening every weekend. There's music festivals. There's all sorts. Every weekend, all year round, there's something going on in this region. Now,
and you're close to nature.
And you're 20 minutes from anywhere.
Skiing, hiking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, biking.
Yeah. If you love the outdoors, it's a wonderful place in winter and summer to be here. There's no doubt about that. But there are things that clearly we as Anglos can do to make our stay here, however long it's going to be. You might be here for the rest of your life. You might be here for a few months. But there's things that we've got to do. I think we've got to come here with an open mind. Would you say?
Oh yeah,
you have
definitely.
You have to be realistic about your opportunities here. People can make a go of it and can be successful, and it takes a lot of hard work. There's clearly many other things that we can talk about with regards to moving here and making a go of it. But and perhaps we'll explore that with a group of people from different regions in other discussions. Now. But just to wrap this up, for anybody considering moving here, what's the number one piece of advice you could give them?
Well, it would definitely be learn French, because it's your ticket to everything. With French, you'll fit in, even if you have an accent or you don't know the word for everything. At least you'll be on the road to finding what you want, and at least you'll be able to buy a stamp. It's a good start.
Okay, so. That's it for now for this show. Thanks. I'm Andrew Greenfield from Life in Quebec, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for listening to a Life in Quebec podcast. For more news, editorials, and opinion, visit lifeinquebec.com.